Ron DeSantis every single day goes to work strictly for himself and not for you. He is all about improving his own political ambitions at the expense of the people he is elected to serve.
Hey everybody, it's Natasha with Keeping Watch. I'm so glad that everybody enjoyed our first show. This is now our second show. Very excited to have a special guest on. But let's go ahead and jump right in. We've got some news that I want to share with all of you. So I don't know if any of you have been following along, but there has been a college takeover here in the state of Florida. New College of Florida, which is a smaller public college down in the Sarasota area that has been historically a very pro-integration, pro-diversity, multiculturalism, sort of liberal college, is now being taken over by Ron DeSantis, the governor, and all of his buddies. And they want to completely change it into a far right-wing indoctrination factory. How do I know? Well, they've fired the president. They're starting to fire all the professors. The person that they're using as part of the framework that's now sitting on their board is Chris Rufo, who is the guy behind all of the crazy stuff around CRT. And, remember when we didn't know what it was? Well, that's the guy who made it a problem all of a sudden because it wasn't really a problem and now it is. So, latest update, listen to this. And this headline is out of the Miami Herald. Nothing says white male privilege like the outrageous salary of new college president. Who is this new president that replaced the other president that was fired without cause of New College of Florida? Richard Corcoran. Who's Richard Corcoran? He was the Republican Speaker of the House. Matter of fact, fun fact, when I started working in politics. And apparently he's going to be paid $700,000 to lead a school that is less than 700 students. Must be nice to have friends in high places, right? That are just going to make way for you to have a job and make almost $1 million, because it says that not only is he going to get the $700,000 salary, he's going to get $84,000 a year for housing. He's going to get a $12,000 car allowance, $104,000 in retirement compensation. So he's essentially going to be a millionaire for a job that he didn't earn. So that's what's been going on lately in higher education news. Other news. So the Florida legislature has okayed migrant relocation plans. So months ago, Governor DeSantis did that stunt, right, where he got planes and he picked up migrants from another part of the country and flew them up to Martha's Vineyard because he wanted to supposedly own the libs. And that cost a bunch of money. We had a special session recently where Democratic lawmakers were asking how much all of that costs. They refused to disclose that information. Well, they went ahead and had a special session last week because apparently that stunt that he did was kind of running afoul of the law. And so he said, hey guys, go ahead and change the law for me so that in the future I can do it again and it's not going to be illegal. So they went ahead and did that. And it's going to cost us about 10 million taxpayer dollars and more potentially to keep doing that. So we're going to continue in Florida to take migrants that are not in Florida and traffic them to places that are also not Florida. Okay, next headline. Medicaid. So apparently, in case you didn't know, the state of Florida is projecting that 1.75 million of us are going to lose our Medicaid coverage as the pandemic era law is going to expire. And because we live in a state that refuses to expand Medicaid, that means that even more people are just not going to have health coverage that actually need it. So our most vulnerable people aren't going to have healthcare coverage. So that's also a thing happening in Florida. Last thing, and I'm done, I swear. Apparently, there is an organization called Equal Ground, wonderful partners of ours. They do a lot of really great work on voter education, voter registration, redistricting, and so on. They did a deep dive into Governor DeSantis's donors. Why? because recently he you put out that ban on AP African American Studies courses, right? And it's Black History Month, and so they thought, let's look into all of the corporations that are giving money to the very same guy that is against Black history. And apparently, these are companies that have said publicly, "Happy Black History Month. We celebrate Black people," and yet they're funding a guy who is getting rid of Black history in our schools. So that's the news for this week.
Since you are here enjoying our show, please make sure to follow us on all of our socials so you can experience all Florida Watch and Keeping Watch news and information. We are at Florida Watch on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube. While you're at it, check out our website at floridawatch.org and our partner website at progressflorida.org.
So last episode, I had such a great time talking to State Representative Angie Nixon out of Jacksonville. And we were going on and on. It was a wonderful conversation. And unfortunately, in the last episode, we did not have enough time to include the entire piece. And so I hope that you will continue listening to hear the rest of that interview in today's episode. Enjoy. I'm super excited to have you. One of the things that I think, we're trying to do with this podcast is help bring folks in that aren't necessarily well versed in really politics, especially state politics. So one of the things I would love for you to share with folks is, to you, what does it mean to be a state representative? Like, what is that?
Yeah, so what it means to be a state representative to me is the ability to help folks who often go underserved or unheard. I am able to be their mouthpiece, which folks say I have a lot of at times. I'm also able to connect people to resources and potentially opportunities that they otherwise would not have. I really take constituency services seriously. I'm actually a former district aide for this same district. Well, actually, it was District 14. I used to work for State Representative Mia Jones. And so I learned a lot through her in regards to being an elected official, but more so being a public servant. And so I really take this job seriously. I feel as though I have over 150,000 bosses within my district, and I just want to make sure that I'm doing a good job for them. And, they get the opportunity every 2 years to renew my contract or to let me go. And so it was recently renewed. And so I'm going to continue to try to serve them in the best of my ability.
That's awesome. So renewed your contract. How did those 150,000 constituents or people do that exactly?
Yeah, so they renewed my contract via voting for me in November, as well as, during the primary in August. I am currently the state representative for Florida House District 13 that is located in Duval County, home of the Jacksonville Jaguars. We will be winning the Super Bowl next year. Just you wait and see. It is Northwest Jacksonville as well as West Jacksonville and some of the urban core. And that is the area that I represent. And so I won pretty handedly, which just goes to show, I think, the fact that I'm constantly in the community. Just take this week, for instance, we had 3 workshops that many folks wanted to have within the community. One being to talk about property insurance and why it's so high, and also to let folks know about the new bill and how it's going to impact them. We also even worked with some nonprofits in the Jacksonville area who oftentimes don't know how to navigate the legislature and really want to try to get access to state funds. And so we had an appropriations workshop for them, particularly those smaller nonprofits. And then today we're actually also talking about digital broadband equity, digital access for folks. And so I try to have workshops and do events that addresses the issues that people often bring to me. And so that we can help actually uplift them in their situations. I'm a Christian and grew up in the Christian faith, and I strongly believe in not just giving someone a fish, but teaching people how to fish. And so like I consider that my work here as a state legislature, just equipping people with the tools and resources that they need to actually help themselves flourish.
That's awesome. I feel like just from watching you as a freshman lawmaker and seeing just all of the wonderful things you're doing, I think it's great, and I think we need more people at your level, right, the state level, doing this type of work. I think folks out there really don't know just how important state politics can be to their everyday lives, and so I just appreciate you sharing that with us. One thing I am curious about, though, for anybody that might be interested, because we can always use good people doing good things. How do you become a state representative? Like, what is that? Is there a certain way to do that? You got to be a certain type of person. What is that about?
And so that's the thing, right? A lot of people think you have to be this prim and proper professional or a lawmaker or a doctor or something like that. And that's not the case at all. I'm a community organizer. I come from the community. And it would be great to have more individuals that are representative of this diverse state of Florida than, the folks sometimes that we have here in the legislature currently. And what I mean by that is that many of my colleagues are millionaires, right? And the average salary or income of household income in the state of Florida, I believe it's around 70 something, $80,000, 80,000 around that. And clearly that's not millionaire status. And so we need folks that represent, some people like to say everyday people, but I like to say just all Floridians in general. And so what I've seen over the past few years up in Tallahassee is that the interests that are getting pushed through as far as laws being made are really representative of folks who have large incomes or big corporations. And so it's important for working class people to actually try to involve themselves in the process, get involved in the community, get your name out there, let people know some of the things that you want to see. The fact that we need a people's agenda, the fact that we should be passing a people's budget that addresses the needs and concerns and the wants of the people of Florida and not just those who make a lot of money and not just huge corporations. That's how people can start getting involved. Also, the people's budget basically is some of the things that many across the community stated that they wanted in a people's budget, in a budget that the state legislature passes and that the governor would sign. So folks have stated they want more funding for education. They do realize that there is a mass exodus or exit of teachers, educators in the public school system. So they want to make sure that our teachers are getting paid well. They want to make sure that our public schools have the resources that they need. Also, within the people's budget, folks have talked about things like expanding access to quality, affordable health care. And one way in which we would be able to do that is if the governor would allow us to expand things like Medicaid. Another thing is early childhood education. Many folks want to ensure that free VPK is extended to a full day. Folks want to make sure that there's more resources allocated for parks and fixing up the failing infrastructure and things like that, as opposed to giving money to insurance companies in the amount of $3 billion. And they, as consumers, will never feel that. So a people's budget is just something that is reflective of what the people want across the state of Florida after having taken surveys and having conversations and showing up at meetings, saying what they wanted and making their demands. And so I feel we as elected officials in the state of Florida, state reps and state senators, should be working towards creating a people's budget. Unfortunately, the party that is in leadership, they don't really feel that way. And so it's up to us and the people within the communities to come together and really demand what we want and work to hold those folks in power accountable for it. And so, unfortunately, money plays a huge role in politics, but I was able to push back against the money because I had done so much work in the community and I had built so many relationships, and people were able to vouch for me and let folks know that I am going to be the same person I am as a community organizer, and how I represented people on a smaller scale. Like, this would only, being elected would only add to that and amplify that. And so if people want to get involved, they could definitely reach out to me. I'm always down to give pointers, suggestions, help guide people. But we definitely need some more folks that are considered working class up in this Florida House and Senate. You can get more information about the People's Budget on the Florida for All website. It's floridaforall.vote, and you'll learn a lot more about the People's Budget.
So for folks listening, when Rep. Angie Nixon is talking about the budget, the people's budget, so there is a budget. So in every year, state senators and state representatives meet in Tallahassee and determine what the budget will be for the entire state. And the budget funds things like state agencies like the Department of Transportation, right? And you think about that when you're going to get your driver's license, or the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, where they make sure to inspect our food and make sure it's safe, and, do concealed carry weapons permits and things like that. And so, recently the governor proposed what he would like the state legislature to put in their budget, and it was to the tune of about almost $115 billion. And so that is your money. That is the money that, those are your tax dollars, right? And so when we talk about a budget, we talk about elected officials making a budget, they are using your tax dollars to decide where it's going to go. They're saying, okay, you own a house, you pay your property taxes, whatever, you pay your sales taxes, et cetera, et cetera. We decide that this year we're going to use that money to give teachers raises. Or this year, we're going to use that money to make sure that Bright Futures for your college student is fully funded. They do this every single year, and it can change every single year. And so it is really important that your elected officials understand what you value as a person who is paying for this budget, and what you'd like to see, where you'd like to see that money. Is it to roads? Is it to schools? What is it? So Angie's just saying it should be people focused. It should be the people's budget because it's our dollars. And I would love to see that. I think a lot of folks out there don't realize just how accessible their lawmakers are. Do you check emails from constituents? Is that something? I have DMs. I don't know. You guys are on social and stuff, right?
Yeah. So let's be real. So all lawmakers are not accessible, unfortunately. That's one of the reasons that I decided to run back in 2020. People were saying that lawmaker wasn't as accessible as they would have liked them to be. And so I made a promise to the community when I decided to run, I was going to be open, honest, transparent, accessible to them. So yes, I check emails. I respond to folks on social media. I pop in and out of community meetings, online workshops for people if they like me to. And anybody who wants a meeting, I'm down to schedule it and to help them with whatever it is that they need, or to connect them to whatever resources that they need. And I mean, they elected me. Again, they're my bosses. I can't just say, no, I don't want to meet with you. What? You can't tell your boss you don't want to meet with them. And so I am down to meet with them because, again, I want them to extend my contract. And that's the way I treat my office.
Well, it sounds like you love what you do. I thought it was super cool when you had an event, a virtual event, where you were taking ideas for bills from your constituents. Like, people could just say, hey, I see this problem and I would like a solution to it. And you are actually considering filing a bill to do that. I think that's really, really awesome. If folks are listening and they're thinking, man, this is really exciting. I've never thought about politics in this way. Like, how can people get more engaged when it comes to voting or, like you said, running for office? Like maybe somebody out there didn't think they could run for office, but they really can. Like regular people do it all the time. How do we get involved?
Yeah, so there's a number of ways folks can get involved. They can reach out to their elected officials, let folks know that they're interested, and see if they could possibly volunteer and learn more about running for office. They can also reach out to their local parties if they're a Democrat, if they're a Republican, that's the way. And then there are also some organizations that do the work and do candidate trainings and things like that. Florida for All is a great a resource that folks can reach out to. Also, an organization called Run for Something. If women are interested in running, Ruth's List or Emily's List is something as well. And so, again, if folks have a question or are really interested in running for office, they can reach out to me and I can connect them to some resources and some organizations that can help them with that. But I would definitely say, for sure, they should just get involved in the community, start attending neighborhood association meetings, citizen planning advisory type committee meetings, and just really delving into what's going on within their district, right? And learning more that way. And also continue to keep track of what's going on with Florida Watch. So you can learn more stuff and be well versed and equipped with what's going on, and you can take that to the community as well.
I mean, thanks for the plug. We do what we can. I think some folks, maybe they don't want to run for office or, they already vote and they're like, okay, I'm doing that. But I am just so darn mad with what's happening. And I want to hold people accountable. How can folks hold their politicians accountable for not looking out for us the way that they need to?
Yeah, so there's always strength in numbers. So it's great when folks can join groups that are doing accountability or creating groups that are doing accountability, making phone calls to their elected officials, sending emails, demanding meetings, demanding the elected officials come to community meetings or host their own to let the community know about what they're doing in Tallahassee or in city council or whatever. Oftentimes elected officials bank on folks not knowing what's going on, really. I'm just being honest. And so it's, we have to hold them accountable. I want people to hold me accountable. Call me, text me, email me, social media, hit me up, show up. If I'm having an event, show up, talk to me. If you're not happy, let me know and we'll figure out ways to address those issues. But if you are seeing that your elected official is not having community meetings, they're not responsive to your calls, then organize around that and let people know we do not need someone that way. And hopefully we can vote someone in to listen to us. And so elected officials have to know folks care. The squeaky wheel gets the most oil, and that is true in politics. When you hear about an issue over and over and over again from multiple people, that's something that elected officials usually start trying to address because they don't want to get it too out of hand. They don't want it to get too out of hand, and they don't want to be portrayed in a negative light. And so I would say, join organizations, go to community meetings, go to meetings where your elected officials are going to be, and then ask the hard questions.
Angie, do you want to talk about property insurance? A lot of folks have been going back and forth about Florida's property insurance market. They're saying it's in crisis. There was a special session recently to fix the property insurance crisis in Florida. What do you have to say about Florida's property insurance?
I believe that Florida's property insurance, I believe that the crisis is not going to go away anytime soon. I believe that the lobbyists really played into this more and lobbied really hard, the governor as well as those in leadership. And instead of actually addressing some of the root cause, they actually just went into it to kind of get more money out for themselves. There were things that they talked about saying, oh, all the frivolous lawsuits. We've passed legislation back in 2019, as well as this past year in regards to that. And they noticed a sharp decrease in lawsuits and things like that. And so instead of addressing the issue like the rising cost and putting money in a trust fund that folks can tap into to actually lower the consumer rates for property insurance, instead they just gave the corporations $3 billion. And they also made it harder for consumers to actually basically go after the insurance companies when they do in fact deny their claims. The insurance companies are in the business of making money. They're not in the business of making their customers whole again, which is what they should be, right? Like they should be customer service first. But instead, they oftentimes deny claims. If something happens to your roofs cost about $15,000, $25,000, they may deny that claim, and you don't know how to go about trying to appeal it and getting more to make sure your roof is fixed. And so normally folks would go to an attorney to help them out with that, right? But now you can still go to an attorney, but you're gonna have to pay out of pocket. And before, if you went with an attorney and you were able to get your claims paid, the insurance companies would be required to pay those attorney fees. Now they're not. And so now, if you can't afford to pay for an attorney, because they're not going to just, take a case $25,000 and take a percentage of that. That's not enough money for them, unfortunately. Now, at times, you're just going to have to eat that and come up with the funding of your own to get your roof fixed. And it's very unfortunate. And again, it's like, why are you paying all this insurance and you still gonna have to come out of pocket because your insurance company isn't looking out for you? They're looking out for their bottom line. That's just not right. It's not fair. But again, it just shows, again, what I stated earlier, how big a role money plays in politics. And like lobbyists in these companies give these elected officials all this money to pass policies and laws that benefit them. And so if the people aren't showing up and making calls and sending emails and putting pressure on elected officials, they could care less. And that's what we see in Tallahassee. There are folks that are in power right now that could care less about working class people. And that's very unfortunate.
Well, there you have it, folks. All politics is local, and be a squeaky wheel. You heard it from elected officials. Amazing. So thank you so much. I hope you all enjoyed listening to my fun chat with Representative Angie Nixon. Coming up next, though, I have a very special guest. It's an interview with DeSantis Watch Communications Director Anders Croy. And he's going to talk to us a little bit about what DeSantis Watch is, why it's important, and how we all can get involved in holding America's worst governor accountable.
Nothing changes in local or national politics unless you vote. And due to recent changes in Florida law, all requests for vote-by-mail ballots expired at the end of 2022. To continue to receive an absentee ballot and be able to vote by mail, contact your local supervisor of elections at myfloridaelections.com/contact-your-SOE and request your absentee ballot today.
Welcome back, everybody. Happy to have Anders Croy, Communications Director for DeSantis Watch, joining us for a chat today. So Anders, welcome. If you could you just tell us a little bit more about who you are and tell us more about DeSantis Watch?
For sure. And Natasha, thank you for having me on. It's so great to, as always, speak to you and see your smiling face through our podcast screen here today. I am Anders Croy. I'm the communications director for Florida Watch, as well as our DeSantis Watch joint accountability project that we do with our friends at Progress Florida. I have been working in Florida politics for 11 years now, both on the campaign side as well as in the legislative process, and now here for some nonprofit work. I'm a sixth generation Floridian. I'm born and raised in Tallahassee, Florida. And I love this state, and getting to work every day to try to improve it and make it a better place to live is really a lifelong dream come true.
Yeah, you might actually be the only Tallahassee native that I know in my friend circle, which I think is pretty cool. Um, I love that.
We're
So yes,
we're a crazy group of people, the ones who were here before air conditioning.
you're definitely a special breed, and that's part of why I'm so excited to have you on the show. I'm familiar with DeSantis Watch, but I think a lot of folks out there may not be, and I think this is a great opportunity for you to talk a little bit more about what is DeSantis Watch.
So DeSantis Watch, as I mentioned, is a joint accountability project between us here at Florida Watch and our partners at Progress Florida. We felt that people need to be informed about what Florida's governor is up to, what it could mean for them, what it could mean for their family, what it means for their community. We think that he needs to be held accountable. Ron DeSantis every single day goes to work strictly for himself and not for you. He is all about improving his own political ambitions at the expense of the people he is elected to serve. Whether that means doing favors for his corporate donor buddies, whether that means attacking marginalized and minority communities in our state, whether that means just going on one of his normal whiny rants that he likes to do as he tours the state all the time. The people of Florida need to know, and the people of this country need to know, what does a Ron DeSantis governorship mean for you? What could a Ron DeSantis presidency mean for you? And we feel that through both traditional earned media, through social media, through digital organizing, through connecting with people, that we can help to get the word out and provide folks with the resources and the ability that they need to hold him accountable, whether that's at the ballot box, whether that's calling him, calling their local representative, but just getting involved, because these policies, they are going to impact your life. They're going to impact the lives of the loved ones you have around you. And they're going to impact the future of this state, which I do think we all love and want to see the best for. So that is why we started DeSantis Watch. It's why we continue DeSantis Watch now. And we want to make sure that people feel empowered um, in their own way to get involved and to make a difference.
No, that's perfect. That's really comprehensive. I mean, I know that's exactly why, I work with you in DeSantis Watch. I think a lot of, if you're a Floridian, you understand, I think, a little bit better than most people in the country, the sort of the risk that DeSantis poses to our rights as people, whether we're women, whether we're of color, whether we're LGBTQ, et cetera, right? With all sort of these endless attacks that he's using to get himself in the news all the time. But, even just sort of the way that he's managed to take control over policies and laws and things that affect us every single day. And I can't imagine what he's doing in Florida becoming what he does as president someday. And so I guess, you talked about how people can get involved and things like that. You know, we just had a special session, right? And, people may or may not know what that is, right? So we talked about in previous episodes, right, that a session is when the lawmakers of the state get together and they make or change laws, right? A special session is when it is outside of the normal session, which is going to start in March, where they make or change laws. So can you talk a little bit about the special session that just happened, which I know it's hard to keep track here in Florida. We're constantly having special sessions, so they're not really special anymore. But the most recent special session, Anders, if you could just talk a little bit about what happened, what was it all about?
Well, I think you were totally right there. They are not so special sessions at this point. And the one that we just held here in Florida is a prime example of that. What we saw was taxpayer dollars being spent to help Ron DeSantis run for president. This special session was all about cleaning up the legal messes that Ron DeSantis has made as he has sought to punish his political opponents, as he has sought to use the plight of migrants trying to flee from authoritarian regimes as political pawns in his game of immigration to appeal to the far right. And as we saw, it was not anything about actually helping the people of Florida. I want to give a huge shout out to Leader Fentress Driscoll and the House Democrats here in the state who tried to expand the call of this session to include Medicaid expansion and to include property insurance reforms that would have brought rates down for homeowners here in the state who are struggling to pay for property insurance every month. But instead, what we saw was a governor who has broken the law, violated what was in the letter of the law when it came to how he was awarding contracts to political donors, politically connected corporations, in order to administer his migrant flight program. We've seen many of his cases from what I like to call his voter intimidation unit that have been tossed out of court because of jurisdictional issues, because this office was thrown together so quickly and in such a political way. They did not actually think through the legal consequences, so they were trying to clean that up to him by expanding the powers of the statewide prosecutor. And we saw his attacks on private business sort of continued. But at the same time, what we didn't see, Ron DeSantis likes to talk a lot about the woke corporations. There is no governor in the entire country who has given more to those same corporations. These are the people who are actually funding Ron DeSantis. And what his populism is, it's false populism. This man has given billions of dollars in tax refunds to corporations, the largest corporations in the state of Florida. And you know they're the largest corporations because only 1% of corporations here actually pay state income tax on their profits. He has done favors for them at every single turn. And so last week with his attack on, one corporation here in the state, it was pretty much just performative. What it did not do is it did not take away any of their special privileges that they ensure around the fact that they don't pay property taxes right now. It did absolutely nothing to ensure that they are going to pay more in corporate income tax. All it did was punish someone who had the temerity to speak out on behalf of LGBTQ people who are under attack by this governor and his administration every single day. So, I said it before and I'll say it again. He's working for himself. He's not for you. He has compliant lawmakers who are doing his bidding. And that's all that this most recent special session was about.
Yeah, so nothing to lower people's rent, nothing to deal with the property insurance crisis that Florida is facing. I mean, I remember when they had a special session about property insurance, right? And last I checked, that didn't actually help anybody. Am I crazy?
You are once again spot on there. What those special sessions did was give, in total, there were two of them on property insurance, and in total, they have now given $3 billion in our tax dollars to bail out these property insurance companies. Since Ron DeSantis took office, property insurance rates have increased by 112% here in the state of Florida. We pay more than any other state in terms of property insurance premiums every single year. Now, you may think, I don't own a home. Why does property insurance rates matter to me? Because if you rent a home, if your landlord has their rates go up, guess what? Your rent is going up too. So when you're just helping out the people who are the developers, when you're just helping out the people who are the big time donors to your campaign, it's not trickling down to us. Rents in the state of Florida have increased faster than anywhere else since 2020 in the entire country. We've seen increases of 20, 30, 40, sometimes 60% in some portions of the state of Florida. Miami right now is the least affordable housing market in the entire country. These are the things that our governor and our legislature should be focused on. How do we bring down costs for workers, for seniors, for people who have really built this state and keep Florida going every single day, but they're being left behind. People here don't make a living wage in many cases. We have some of the lowest wages in the country, but we're not doing anything to help those folks. And we need to be looking at what are the priorities that matter to us. Is it higher wages? Is it access to health care? Is it a good education for your kids? Is it having enough money in your pocket that if your kid needs a new backpack, you can afford to buy it for him without having to worry about if that means you have to skip a meal that day? And those are the things that our legislature is not focused on, that Ron DeSantis is not focused on. And it's really to the detriment of the people of our state.
Yeah, I think you said it perfectly. So thank you for that. I think the following question really for me is just, and I feel like you've answered it, but why is it so important that people pay attention to what's going on in politics, but in Florida politics specifically? And if you've convinced us with all the things you just mentioned, How can we become more informed, right? How can the uninformed be more informed about these issues?
I mean, it's so important. What happens here, especially at your state government level, which is so close to you, is going to affect your daily life. It's going to affect how much money you make. It's going to affect how high your costs are. It's going to affect the health care you receive, the education your kids get. It's going to affect how our environment is preserved and protected for generations to come. It is vital that people get involved. I will say this. There were some wins last year for the people of the state of Florida, and those wins were achieved because they made their voices heard. Thousands of people reached out and convinced the governor to veto some bad pieces of legislation that would have hurt local freedoms, that would have impacted our ability to expand solar power here in the state, because people got involved and they let it be known that, hey, this is a step too far. So what we encourage folks to do is to get informed. You can look at things like the Progress Florida and Florida Watch report card, People's Report Card that we do every year that scores legislators based on how they're voting and whether or not it's in the best interest of you and I or the corporate interests. I encourage folks to reach out, find out who your state representative is, find out who your state senator is, call their offices. And you can also follow along with us on our social media accounts. We are on Twitter, we are on Facebook, we are on Instagram. We have a great TikTok page. You can visit DeSantisWatch.org and sign up for our updates by email or on social media. But here's the thing. At the end of the day, the corporations and the corporate interests and the billionaires and the millionaires, they might have a lot of the power, but your voice still matters. And we want to do all we can to help empower you to make that voice heard and make it as loud as possible. Because when we all come together and we all make our voices heard as one, that's where real change happens. And we hope that you will get involved and be a part of making the state a little better for both you and I.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you shedding some light on what the governor is up to, telling us about DeSantis Watch, and encouraging folks to get involved. And I think you're absolutely right, Anders. But I think that as somebody whose job is basically to know anything and everything the governor is up to hear you say that there is hope that we as a people can come together and make change, makes me feel a lot better. So thank you again. And I look forward to having you on future episodes if you're interested.
I'm looking forward to coming back. This has been great. And thank you to the listeners. And get out there and make your voice heard.
You heard it here. All right. Stay tuned.
Florida has faced a growing affordability crisis with the cost of rent, utility bills, and insurance going through the roof. All while Ron DeSantis has tried to divide us and distract us from the favors he does for his billionaire corporate donors to advance his political ambitions. DeSantis Watch is a project dedicated to shining a spotlight on the governor's failures of leadership that make all of us less free. Go to DeSantisWatch.org and join the movement.
Okay, don't go anywhere because coming up, we've got a special feature on Black History Month.
And now, a special highlight for Black History Month. Mary McLeod Bethune, the daughter of formerly enslaved people, was an influential educator and activist who, among her other many accomplishments, founded the National Council of Negro Women, advised multiple U.S. presidents, and created a boarding school for black children that would later become Bethune-Cookman University in Daytona Beach. One of her most memorable quotes is, "Our children must never lose their zeal for building a better world." This show and all of our work would be impossible without your support. At Florida Watch, we do research, create graphics and video content, and keep an eye on issues that matter to all of us. We also work hard to keep things fun and informative with our goal to hold accountable extreme politicians like Ron DeSantis. Head over to FloridaWatch.org and click donate to support our cause to help keep up the fight to keep Florida educated, fair, and tolerant.
Thank you, everybody, so much for being here with us. Be sure to join us next time as we're continuing to keep watch on all the craziness that's happening here in the state of Florida. Take care.